Oops. Well, hello there, my friends. How are you today? So, I had meant to set up more of a stage today, but we are in the middle of what they are calling, and this is a new term to me, a bomb cyclone. How goes it, Robert? And I think about it, and I'm like, why do they have to come up with stupid names for a winter storm that just perpetuates the myth that nature is this big evil thing that's just going to destroy us? It's like, it can't just be, oh, we're going to get a little bit of a snowstorm. Now it's a bomb cyclone. I just find it so hilarious and sad at the same time, frankly, that, they do that. Everything is so sensationalized. But welcome to, I believe, I can't remember if this is episode number 5 or 6. And, as I continue to perfect some of these new tools, I got all sorts of awesome stuff planned for this podcast and this live stream. And like I said, everything from interviews to, me doing actual skills. Which reminds me, I want to show you guys something real quick. Maybe I have to wait till after the break for that one. I had something I wanted to show you guys, but it seems to must have put it away somewhere. But anyway, yeah, so today's episode is I'm going to talk a little bit about me and some awesome stuff that I have coming up class-wise. And things like that. Because, as I've mentioned quite a few times, ever since getting here and, being in a place for once in a long time, I feel appreciated and valued, not just because I'm my father's son, but because I'm a 47-year-old man who's been, honing his own craft for 27 years, but I also know how to operate heavy equipment, and I've always lived a rural life, so I fit in here like a perfect little puzzle piece. So that's really I'm really, really thankful for that. It's just I feel like now what I'm doing is cleaning up the mess that was made over the last 5 years, 4.5 years, a mess composed of my own mistakes to just utter betrayals and hurts dealt to me by people who shouldn't have. Next week, I'll mention this now, and I'll mention it again later on. Next Saturday night, I'm going to be hosting a very special live stream at 7 p.m. Central. because it will be the 47th anniversary of my father choosing to give up his dream, which was to run away to the Bob Marshall Wilderness or the Canadian Rockies with me and my mother and my older brother once I was old enough, around 5 or 6 years old. A night he gave up his dream and decided to live his vision, which was, to write the tracker and start the tracker school. And those who are familiar with the story, this was all brought about when he, as per Stalking Wolf's instructions, he told my father that one day you'll have a son, and on the first moon of purification after his birth, and the moon of purification is January, I was born in November, he said, I want you to take your son back to the sacred area, or the good medicine area in the Pine Barrens, and lift your pipe in thanksgiving. And this place was once, from both my father's writing and talking to him about it, was like the Pine Barrens are incredibly special in their own right. It's one of the most rare ecosystems on the planet. But this particular area just had a beautiful swamp and a beautiful creek and a little bit more biodiversity than other areas of the Pines. And what was once this beautiful area had become an illegal garbage dump. And when my father saw that, he decided that his dream of running away and getting the hell out of society was selfish, when he had information and wisdom to pass along that could help people lead better lives, find their own visions, and sparked a worldwide movement, and one that I am more than happy to also, I've taken it on myself. When I stepped up on the stage for the first time as an adult over 26 years ago, I committed my life to that same vision, a vision that I'm willing to give my life for. And the reason, probably the single reason why I was able to make it through everything I did these last couple of years, was dedication to that vision. Because once I got here, I realized that every hardship I went through, I was able, and I'm going to be able, to turn into lessons which will make me a better educator. And then there's a whole other set of, we'll call them parting gifts, that were gifted to me, by elders and by the earth and the unseen and eternal, that I'm trying to put words to. So here I am with my notebook just full of content and ideas and classes and information, but the havoc of the last 5 years, especially on the financial side, has me taking these little baby steps. And one thing I say frequently, as a grown man, I fully accept responsibility for every choice I've ever made, because it has led me to, hey Dad, how you doing? Welcome. It has led me to be the man I am today, and be here in this point in space and time. But a few years back, I started to wonder, like, this struggle part's going on a little bit too long. Like, there's something else happening here, and that's when I found out that, and I'm still finding out things, that were purposefully crafted to ensnare me, to hold me back, to keep me from having a voice especially after my father took his final walk, that I am just done with, it's hurtful. That's up, Boston. I was wondering that you, because you're yeah. So it's like, as somebody who has no choice but to accept responsibility for those decisions, what happens when your decisions are being guided by counsel of people that you love and trust, but they don't have your best interest at heart. And you, at the time, I was either in a state of grief over my father's passing, or my mother's passing, and things slipped in under my radar, and now I'm left to deal with this mess that I'm so desperately trying to claw my way out of. But now that I'm in a place where I know I'm not going to be asked to like pick up shop and leave, and my buddy and I are already planning classes for around here in the spring. I can finally start to clean, like do a deep clean on the mess and get back to like zero. I just want to get back to zero, and then I'll be good to go. But yeah, it's one day I will write the most ridiculously insane dark comedy screenplay that you will ever see, because some of the things that went on at certain times were just so comical. I would just be like laughing and crying at the same time. But yeah, I have so much gratitude for the folks here, and for the folks just joining us here in the Midwest. We are in the middle of what is called a bomb cyclone, and I said this earlier. I just love how they come up with more and more creative terms to make us fear nature. Like, why can't they just call it a snowstorm or a blizzard? It's got to have this name. It pisses me off beyond belief. One thing I've been big on lately in my own personal life and my own personal practice is the baseline. And generally when somebody says, or when I say the term baseline in a nature sense, I'm talking about the overall level of sound, movement, and activity going on. Every place has a baseline, from the middle of downtown New York City to the most remote wilderness. And I always seek to move and do things in such a way that I don't disturb that baseline. In fact, I find ways to connect with that baseline and have it guide me to things. And that's something I'm working on a class about, the baseline now, because I used to, I'm a very visual person, so I visualize things. It used to be kind of like a one-dimensional graph, and now I can like separate it out into a three-dimensional EQ almost, and I can ask questions of it. And I will not teach anything unless it's something I can reproduce multiple times in a row. And some of this stuff is just so mind-blowing that I can't wait to start actually teaching it. And it's like exhilarating. And then coming to a new place like this, first of all, we have this beautiful 20 acres that has its own baseline, natural baseline. Then there's my buddy's sawmill business, and then there's the family baseline, and now I'm here, and taking all the skills that I know and can provide, figure out how as a caretaker I can best fit myself into the many baselines that are around me at all times. Little things I can do to help out that I know I can do to a 100% satisfactory rating to anybody who would ask, me to do a job like that. So yeah, it's been fun because I'm around people again that I get to see every day, and which is rejoining the human species was fun. But yeah, it's so nice to know that I have friends that are just over there in their cabin, and I'm over here in the trailer, and we break bread together regularly, and I get to hang out with their two adorable kids, and I'm just so grateful for that. I have so much gratitude for that, and I want to, as much anytime I go someplace for an extended period, I also, as a caretaker, want to leave every person, place, and thing better better when I leave than when I got there. And these past 5 years, combined with my Lyme disease, have taken such a toll on my mental health, my physical health, that like physically, I can't leave here until I'm back where I was, when all this madness started 5 years ago, when I had the seemingly perfect nature educator life, and literally like that overnight it was all flipped and cattywampus. And yeah, so going back to my father's teachings, one of his more powerful teachings is, and a popular one in many different lineages, is the idea of always being a student. And I use the things I went through, the adversities, the struggles, to be a better educator as well. And so that way, I can teach you something that may help you avoid a pitfall that I fell into. And slowly but surely, we can do away with bad behaviors and bad attitudes that have led us as a species to where we are at this point in space and time. Before leaving Oregon, I was living in a neighborhood, and I had just realized how spoiled I was living in the country for as long as I had, in the mountains up in Oregon, and just now being in the city for the last 9 months I was there, and seeing how frightfully unaware people are, and just trying to figure out ways that I can cater the words that I speak so that it resonates with their ears. So I am super excited. Yeah, I did mean to comb my hair before I started today, but I took a little longer running to the store. But yeah, so I will admit, it's funny. I left Portland, and I left that, a lot of the mental stuff that was holding me back. I got to Montana, still dealing with that stuff, but it was slowly slipping away, only to be tossed into literally an oven, where my second day in Montana, it was 122 degrees. It was so hot I couldn't even teach that day because my computer wouldn't even turn on. And then not 2 months later, here I am in Wisconsin, and dealing with like -14 and -15 after 8 years of living in a place where, I could go up into the mountains and get temperatures that cold or a lot of snow, but I lived at about 2,500 feet in altitude, so it typically rained all winter long, and it was typically 40s, low 40s, mid to low 40s with the occasional storm. But yeah, it's been like 35 degrees, from like a couple days before Christmas until today, and it's like t-shirt weather, because before that it was highs of single digits, and I think the lowest my thermometer registered, I've got this little doohickey that's got a thing that hangs outside to read the inside and outside temperature. I think it was negative 18 at one point, and there was a pretty stout wind going. So I imagine with the wind chill factor, it was probably just deadly, And so yeah, it's been a while. I used to spend a lot of time in northern Vermont, and this climate reminds me a lot of that. And so I'm looking forward to, with this fresh snow, maybe making a snow shelter video over the next day or so, because the community here was so generous. They knew I was struggling because I had to part ways with my camera body, to pay my bills. Right around it was more like February last year. It was either sell the camera or lose my car, my business, everything. And having a camera again, I want to share a few of the photos that I've taken over the recent days, that it's been nicer out. So it's funny, when I first got here, there was no snow on the ground. It was just the end of like middle fall, and I had noticed a little bit of rabbit sign, but not much. And then as soon as the snow comes, you see how many rabbits there really actually are around here. So here's one of the first shots I took with my new camera. Let's see, it's picking up another couple other ones here. I like this one. I think I showed this one last week. But just goes to show, the best time to track is in the mornings or the afternoons when the sun is in an angle, because it shows tracks in relief. And that'll come up in my track wrapping class. Yes, I do. It doesn't really stay in that well, though, the reverse wrap of the hair. Let's see, I got one more photo, I think. Oh yeah, and here, this is the little creek that is, about an eighth of a mile walk from my trailer here, and it's a beautiful little creek. And those of you who may have seen a video I posted a few days ago where I was flying my drone through the woods right by the creek, and I actually crashed it into a tree, and it hit some branches, fell down, then flipped over and was hovering again, and it was hovering over all of these animal tracks. And I paused the video there and I put a thing. I said, all right, in the remainder of this video, see how many different animals can you identify? Because there was otter tracks there was coyote tracks, deer tracks, human tracks. It's really, really amazing. Let's see, got a couple questions here. So no, I mean 122 is what I was trying to say. Yeah, that was insane. Let's see here. All right, hold on. Get back up to me. Yeah, so another thing I'm struggling with a little bit is, at least right at this moment, that feeling that I'm, failing the promises I made to my father. But then I think of some of the upcoming collaborations and things that I have going on, and it helps me take care of that. Because ever since I got here and washed off the last of the gunk that was holding me back, I've been getting contacted by people, and I'll share some more about that here in a little bit. But the first one I wanted to talk about is where is it here? So this isn't quite done yet. This flyer, in the weekend around April 10th, my friend Scott Martin and I are going to be hosting a class in the just outside the Black Hills of South Dakota. And don't worry about having to try to scribble the information on the flyer down. I'll put more information in the show notes in the description of this video, and I'll also be putting it up on my website here in the next day or so. But it's basically going to be, it's going to start on April 9th at 6 p.m. And go through April 12th around noon. And it's at a really, really beautiful spot, and good people. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, there'll be more information and a whole page dedicated to it on my website as soon as I can build it. Because I'm also in the process of building a page, because I am going to be a visiting online instructor for Christopher Niergens and his self-reliance school. Somebody who I've been a great admirer of for a long time. He's a prolific publisher, author, written countless articles, and thanks to my buddy Austin, who connected us, he invited me to design a special multi-part online class to run through his organization. So yeah, and then once the weather gets spring, summer, we talked about doing some in-person classes together as well. And I feel like in the outdoor skills world forever, it was, people who studied with my dad were on one side, and then there was this whole other group of people that learned the skills elsewhere. And, there was some animosity between both of the groups. And, my aim is to dispel any and all of that. That's why when I used to go and teach at a lot of gatherings, I wouldn't use my last name, and people would come up to me afterwards or at the end of the weekend, and they'd be like, "I didn't realize you were Tom Brown Jr.'s son," and then they'd say something like, "If he's half the teacher you are, then I've been selling myself short by refusing to go because of some rumor or something I heard." And I'm like, yeah, he's a way better teacher than I am. So yeah, these skills, the skills that many of us teach and that many of us practice, they belong to all of us. They're all of our birthright. And there should be no animosity or anything between any groups that are all working towards the same aim. Which is funny, because I'm, literally feel like I'm being written out of my own history. And it's, heartbreaking to say the least. Which leads me to next Saturday. So typically I do this show on Sunday nights. It's at 5 p.m. Central. I'm thinking about moving it up to 6 p.m. Central. I may do a poll and see. But next Saturday night, I am hosting a very special YouTube event. And it is an anniversary of sorts, and it is the logo I designed for it. So it is the 47th anniversary of the night my father chose to give up his dream of running away to the mountains with my mother and I once I was old enough, and start living his vision, and first came the book The Tracker, then came the school. And so in celebration of that choice he made, and I think about, had he chosen the other option, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. There'd be so many people would never have had their lives changed by his work. And that's why it's tricky when you talk about your dream job versus having a job that's your vision, or a vision you're working towards. Is my dream job is most definitely not all the crap I put up with over the last couple of years. My dream job is to be a Nikon ambassador, and work for National Geographic and travel around the world, taking beautiful photos. But my vision, like my father before me, is to continue to pass on the skills that I've been honing my entire life and teaching for now close to 27 years. And I will do it until I take my last breath. There will be no retirement, which really upsets me, because I really wish there was some way I could just cash out my Social Security now, seeing all the money they've taken from me over the years. And because something tells me by the time I'm old enough to need Social Security, there won't be such a program anymore. Who the hell knows the way things are going these days with governments and the world. But yeah, I'd like to have access to those funds, because it's I'm wow, I've taken well over $100 and something thousand out of my paychecks over the years, and that could be really useful right now. So yeah, as far as the class with Christopher goes, and a School of Self-Reliance, I will be posting a link to his website and some more information about that in the show notes after the live stream ends. And then starting right around the 1st, you'll be able to go check out the class from his website and register for it. And then I'll be also putting up my own schedule of classes as well, as I kind of slowly ease back into things. And because because I've been forced to just do things so frantically and hectically, I've never gotten my fair chance to roll out a business the way I knew it needed to be done. And I refuse to half-ass or half-do anything anymore. I used to take great pride in the fact to be able to say that I was always able to honor my word. And I feel like over these last few years I've let so many people down in so many ways, and I just want to make it up to everybody. And the best way I can do that is by to keep pushing through, keep reaching higher and higher, and get back to a place where I am at one with all things again. It's been an incredible journey. I've learned so much. I've learned so many new dang computer skills. But it's today I woke up And I thought about all the things I have to do over the next 2 days, when all I want to do is go run around and play in the snow and track and take photos. And I literally have to force myself to not work, at least, in small increments here and there. I've become so conditioned to working from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed, that if I don't literally program a reminder into my calendar to like go for a walk or take a deep breath, stop doing whatever you're doing for 15 minutes, I won't do it. I'll just sit and write and create content until the cows come home. And granted, I love what I do, and it will all be useful work as things pick up steam. But I miss the freedom of just being able to simply like take a day off and not have to worry about something falling apart or something going wrong. And I just want to build my larder up back to a point where I didn't have to worry about financial things so much. I loved the time when I was able to pay for my website subscription for a year, and this thing for a year, and that thing for a year. And then I just, as somebody who is now trapped in the exact trap that they want most people in, that trap of debt, once I climb my way out of this, I will never go back. My friend here, who I live with, yeah, let's do it. I'd love teaching the Sierras. But yeah, it's waking up every morning with this like sinking feeling because you've got bills due and nothing to pay them with. And after spending many years purposely saving to not fall into that situation, making one bad choice, which led me to 5 years of living in essential poverty. I mean, like I said, last year, according to my journal, I only ate 4 out of every 7 days because I chose to pay for things like my website and my email and my Zoom, so that I still had a voice to the outside world. And it was worth it. And that's why, another reason why I'm incredibly transparent. I don't sugarcoat anything. And if I'm in a bad mood or feeling crappy, I'm gonna talk about it, because too much of this world and people in it these days are guided by people on social media who seemingly have these perfect lives, when really it's just a bunch of curated nonsense. And everybody has their issues. Everybody has their dirty underwear. And if you fall into that same old trap of believing that the grass is always greener on the other side, or that person's life is so much better than mine because they have this and I don't, you are you're playing the game that they want you to play. And that's not the game I want to play. I want to live in a world where people can go about life without having to feel like they have to put a mask on when they go one place and then change it out for another mask when they go somewhere else, where they can just genuinely be comfortable enough with who they are to just be who they are all the time. And it's amazing how much lighter you feel when you discard that bag of masks that many of us lug around with us. Yeah. But yeah, everything I do, from learning all the necessary skills to operate a business to the most challenging one was going from having 15 years of life stuff collected that was usually out and displayed in one of my homes that I rented over the years, uh, having to slim all that down into a Subaru. I've had to been forced to come up with creative ways to streamline things, to streamline my workflows, to store things in certain ways so that I'm not just looking through piles of stuff looking for something. It's like now I lead a life where as soon as this ends, the first thing I'll do is I'll go take the cord out of my computer or out of my camera. I'll wrap it up. I'll put it back in the case it goes, break all that stuff down, and everything has a place. And the place has, the old saying. And what I found is as I've shed a lot of this stuff, you realize how little you actually need a lot of it. And it's funny, I say this often, but one of my earliest memories of my father and I is we were in his truck and we were driving around and he was telling me, his rules about vehicles, how, always have a half tank, make sure you always have a half tank of gas in your vehicle so that way you have some fuel, and never always back into a parking place because you can get out of it easier. Always carry, a full change of clothes in the back of your car and shoes and water. But then, like, at the end of it, I remember him snickering and he was like, and try to always live a life where you don't have any more stuff than you can get ready and be gone with in about 15 or 20 minutes. And it's the irony in it is, in order to teach the things I teach, teaching this way virtually, I need computer gear that's off to the side here you can't see. To teach physical classes, I need materials, I need tools. These are all things I got to carry with me. And so, if I had just set out on this journey as somebody, going to make a documentary or take photos or just do one thing, I would have had a whole hell of a lot more room. But having to juggle these many different hats, it's taught me a lot. Now, one thing, my father was so regimented with his life. He used to actually fold his dirty laundry, and I say that often because he's the only person I've ever known to do that, and it just never made sense to me. But those of you who may have known my father knew he was a very organized, kind of regimented man. In his truck, like, everything had a pouch or a pocket, and I've become very much the same way, and I've had to in order to just maintain the slightest grip on sanity as I've gone through the things and done the work. But yeah, so I'm excited about this new collaboration with Christopher and his school, and the class in South Dakota with my friend Scott, and some of the things that I'll be setting up here. Thanks, Evan. Always Cerakote your calipers. I was just, as I got back from the store before, I looked under my car and I just see all the, like, salty snow, and I'm like, if there's three things I really miss about the Pacific Northwest: no ticks, at least not where I lived, no poison ivy, and they don't use salt on the roads, so you don't have to worry about your vehicles rusting out. I've seen since I got here vehicles that are like a couple years old, 5 years old, that already have rust on them, like on the body of the vehicle, which is crazy. Um, so yeah, I try to drive as infrequently as possible. Um, so yeah, so as far as those classes go, I'm going to be changing my. Oh yeah, my dad's. I have forever tried to have a penmanship similar to my father's, and when I was very young, I had fantastic penmanship. But then, computers came along, and everybody texts now, and that's one of the reasons why when I found out about these things years ago, it's made by a company called Remarkable, to where you actually, I can import PDFs from like my Google Drive, and then I can write over top of them, or I can do like calligraphy or anything like that. So I've been working on my penmanship again, and this thing is just great because not only does it hold hundreds of books, ebooks, but it's got all my various plans for my various classes, all the nuts and bolts of my business, brain word vomit, plenty of that, manuals for things. So yeah, and the good thing about this company, they're from Finland, I think. They make these devices so they only come out with a new version like every 5 or 6 years, and they are it's basically like an Amazon Kindle, and when you write with it, it actually feels like you're writing. Let's see, where's my sheet here? So one thing I'm in as I get ready to wrap it up here, and I had some more stuff planned for today, but I was not. I looked at the weather on, I think it was Christmas night, and it was like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It was supposed to be like 45 and sunny. Oh, so yeah, it's called a Remarkable. I'll put it in the chat here. Yeah, it said it was supposed to be in like the 40s and sunny. And then all of a sudden, overnight, they changed to where no more 40s. It's going back down into the single digits. Just since I've been sitting here talking to you all, the temperature in here has dropped 10 degrees, which is making me bummed I don't have my slippers on. But yeah, that's what I've loved about moving into this trailer is, I can't tell you how many shelters I've built in my life and slept in, but adapting this 3-season mobile home to 4-season sub-zero life has taught me so much about the principles of building a good shelter. And so yeah, that's why and yet another very powerful teaching of my father's that I do every day is choose to, like I said, wake up, empty your cup, and or as grandfather would put it, forget you have a past, and go out about your days without expectation. And when you do that, when you live that style of life, everything you come into contact with, there's room there for learning and for teaching, because everyone and everything can teach you something, but only if you're open to it. And it's so unfortunate that so many members of our species choose, the American dream route of being so focused on the goal of the money and the fame and the wealth or whatever, and then they work their whole lives and they get to the end and maybe they achieve it, but then they're like well, wait a second, I'm supposed to be happy now. I have all this stuff. No, it's that peace, that love, that joy, that purpose beyond self that everybody secretly craves, that fills that void that is in many people. That's what we should be striving towards as humans. And that's why, throughout the course of my career, I've taught, you know, billionaires and movie stars, and oftentimes people with the most, physical wealth, or, monetary wealth, are some of the most miserable people there are. Because they work so often, they have no interests. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I do the same thing, but luckily with my work, working around nature and ancestral skills, there are so many different avenues to explore that, I can never do bow drill enough times. In fact, one of the things I wanted to show you all is 2 or 3 years ago, my friend Zach, they cut down, it was one of the largest junipers. When we think of juniper, we think of a shrub, like a small shrub, and they rarely get tree size. But this one was, I think it was 24 inches in diameter. And I got a section of it, and, the outer wood, the sapwood, is that, cedar color, but then the center of it is just this beautiful purple, wood. And so I'm going to make some all purple bow drill kits and send them out as gifts to people, because it's I've made juniper bow drill kits before with branches of dead juniper bushes and things like that, and it is definitely nowhere near as easy as cedar is. But I'm wondering if, because this juniper had much bigger growth rings, wider growth rings, that maybe it'll be a little bit easier. And it's like one thing I'm excited about doing. So, and there's a lesson in that. Don't ever fall into that trap that, just because you've done something 1,000 times, that you fully know it. It's like people who are masters of things, will be the first to tell you that, you can't ever master anything. In fact, the more you learn about things, the less you realize you actually know. And so it's those mysteries that keep me pushing forward and keep me craving what's around the next corner, what's around the next bend, and all that. So I'm going to start closing every episode with a quote that I want you to ponder. And no real rhyme or reason. I'm a big fan of quotes, because sometimes there are certain people out there who in just a single sentence are able to express volumes. That's one of the things that still amazes me about my father, is he could say more in one sentence than most people could in 3 chapters. But the days of my these live streams, I'm just gonna post a quote at the end, and I'll leave it up before I end the stream so you get a chance to read it and just mull it over for the week. But yeah, that being said, remember that next week's event will be on Saturday, not Sunday, and it will be at 7 p.m. Because I'm trying to find the magic time slot for the weekend, being in the central time zone now. So I'm gonna do a little experimenting. But yeah, so that one's already up in my live stream queue. And then of course I probably won't do one the day after, but I have a lot of other scheduled live events coming up that are going to be focused on certain skills that I'm working on. Where for instance, on like Mondays and Tuesdays, if I'm working on making some of these purple bow drill kits, I'll have a live stream for a half hour where it's just me sitting there carving, talking about the bow drill, and that it'll be in the queue. You'll see what this week's couple live streams are going to be about. Yes, we will be doing Sinew as soon as I can set things up in a place where my hands don't get frozen. We finally just got the wood stove in the one shop going and safe again. So hopefully next week I've got the deer legs all ready to go. But yeah, that's going to be the first one up. But yeah, I want to start doing this podcast to be a vignette into my daily life. And my whole life is dedicated to practicing, learning, and passing on what I've dedicated my life to. And that is a world in which we live a bit more harmoniously with nature instead of just being takers. We give back, where we're nice to each other, where we are stewards in the truest meaning of the word, and every place we go, we leave better than when we first got there. So this week, did I put the quote up? So thank you all for being here. It's good to see more and more people showing up every week, and that's why I'm going to keep doing them. I'm hoping to do my first interview episode soon, so that's something to look forward to. And yeah, so as I figure this stuff out, and especially now that I have a camera body again, that allows me to take my remote capabilities and multiply them by 10. So yeah, you're gonna get a lot more cool videos and things like that. It's just taking your camera out when it's -4 and blowing ice is not very good. So you got to get out there in the short windows when you have the nicer days. Oh, you're gonna have to wait and see there on who I'm interviewing. So alright, everybody, until next time, as always, peace, love, joy, and purpose beyond self. And let me see if this so this quote is by one of my favorite authors, the great Frank Hebert, author of the Dune series. One of the most, in my opinion, well-written, nuanced series of books, which his son has also picked up and continued on. Just has some really, really amazing, thought-provoking quotes in there. So thank you all for being here this week. I'm going to cue to the slide, and I'll leave it up for a minute before I end the stream. And I will hopefully see you all next Saturday for the special anniversary live stream. And I'll start posting about that tomorrow and things, just so that people are aware. So, alright, y'all, have a wonderful night. I'm going to go get my slippers on and make myself some bratwurst and do some cleaning up in here because it's a little bit messy. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate it oh so much. Blessings to you all.